So you have a really interesting way of describing the human experience, and you say that we're in a psychosis in humanity. Can you explain that?
Explain the psychosis of humanity? Wow. Let me see if I can get this into a nutshell. So, as a human being, we have a way of experiencing things, mostly through our five senses. Okay? From the time we were born to now, every experience we've had has formed an identity. Right? We identify ourselves in certain ways, right? Our name is given to us. It's not even our choice, mostly. Right? Most people are given a name, so the title, even who you call yourself, is not even yours. It's given to you, right? So all the things that we learn throughout our lives then form this identity, right? So the identity then is quite unique from person to person, but then from country to country, from state to state, even the United States, right? They're different from different continents around the world, all because of language, ethnicity, culture, belief, all these things, okay? We then believe, because we're taught these things from such a young age, we then believe this is who we are, right? And now it's almost like you're given a role in a play, right? This is who you are. Ed Williamson is your name. You're born in Ireland. This is how many in your family. This is what you do for work. This is what your family was like. This is what your beliefs are. This is what your culture is, your language is. And then it forms this Ed Williamson package of who I am as a human, right? Then we live believing that's who we are. And that's what our life is. These are our experiences. And now we view everything in the world through that lens, right? But living inside that is living inside of a box of this identity. And then there's group identity, of course, because then groups of people, Irish people, people from Africa, people from Asia, right? They all have their own identity, right? But then we live within it, right? And we we believe that the things that we're talking about, we watch it on the news and social media now where everything is hyped up, right? Even the smallest thing is huge. It's all hyped up. And that's the psychosis of it. It's like we're trapped in this whole human thing that we think is what everything is. This is the world. This is how it is. And we're just, if you're able to stand back and look at that, it's like watching ants on an anthill, like just running around doing all these things. Like, it's all about doing the anthill, right? It's all about that. And the ants have no idea about the size of the world and what it encompasses, right? And so humans are like that. They're running around with their lives, doing all these different things, thinking that they're so important, all these things. And of course, on their last day, when they're dying, none of it means anything now, right? So that psychosis that happens in humanity is where we get stuck. And then we don't realize that there's a whole other universe within us and around us and in every other living creature and the earth and the stars that we're completely unaware of. And that's who we really are. So we get stuck into this idea of human living as that's all there is. And of course we think we're top of the food chain, we're the smartest one. The human beings are the smartest people on the planet, smartest species. And look what we've done with it. We go kill each other. So how smart are we, really? That's the psychosis of being stuck in this stuff.
Mm-hmm. And the awakening of it. So I wonder if we are these eternal beings and are we coming into this world to awaken? Is that the whole point of it? Or what's the meaning of life?
There's no meaning to life. If there was a meaning, it would be over, right? There's the meaning, that's it. What do we do now? We found the meaning, right? What? I thought it would be more than this. You can't put a meaning in life. It's too big, it's too vast, it's too large. There's no way to know it all. So there can't be any meaning. Now you can live a meaningful life, right? But the whole idea that there's a, people have this idea that they have a purpose, that they come in with a purpose, and it's just something they like to do. So I think to get beyond the human and to awaken, right, is, like I said, is to recognize that there's more to you than this, right? When you start to awaken, right, and you're able to step back from all of this, you realize how silly this all is. Like, the human experience is when a flower grows, right, it has an experience and it dies, right? But the flower or the tree, they don't, they're there, right? And they do the thing and they go. But we fill ourselves with all this stuff inside of our heads, and we stress and we worry and we get anxious and we get sad and depressed and all of these things. And the flower doesn't do that. It just comes and it goes. It is what it is, right? But we try to make who we are much more than who we really need to be, And so we didn't come in, with this. The best way to describe it is we happened, right? Just like anything happens, right? We happened, and how amazing it is with humans is that we can be aware of who and what we came from. We actually have an awareness and can have an awareness of that, because. It's like you imagine if you were an aware consciousness, right? That could become anything. You'd become everything. You'd become everything. Wouldn't you want to become anything and everything? And so the aware consciousness that's behind all of this is just becoming all kinds of things in the world, like whether it's a star or in the cosmos. We think that we're the only life in the universe, That's how arrogant we are. We think this is it. There's so much more life out there, and awakening is understanding all of this and knowing that you're not just this thing, because that's fleeting. It comes and goes, right? So the awakening part of this is understanding that. And then it's hard. It's hard sometimes. It's why gurus laugh a lot. Because what else are you going to do? Right? What else are you going to do? You look at what's going on, you just laugh because you know that it's meaningless in the end anyway. It's just meaningless in the end. It doesn't really matter anyway, right? You can't live with I don't know forever. You will eventually know. And when you get to that point of knowing, you look back and you go, what? Really? What was I doing? Why was I doing this? So yeah, there's no real, we happened.
It's comforting. If someone is awakening and they're observing all of this around them, how can they, I imagine you can't bring everyone along with you, right, as you're on this path, and it can get lonely. What is someone to do in that situation where they're observing all of this and they're trying to make amends with who they think they are and continuing to find themselves while everyone else around them is in this state of psychosis, as you call it?
So the spiritual journey is done alone. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have help, of course. No one comes awake without guidance and support and in the beginning, right? It doesn't happen like that. But it's the path is on your own, but it's not lonely, and because when you tune into that, there's such a vastness there. How could you be alone? Now you're in tune with everything. So I was just writing about this in this next book that I'm doing about where's my home? Because I grew up in Ireland, right? Now I live in the United States. And and I was just back visiting Ireland again, and they said, welcome home. And like, well, is it my home? Because I've been here so much longer than there. And I really have never identified with a physical place on this earth as I'm home, right? To me, when I'm meditating and I've left all of this behind, now I'm home. That's where I feel I'm home. Because now I'm in touch with everything. I can be in connection with everything and everyone. That to me is home. So that's where I experienced that. Remind me again, because I forget what your original question was.
It was just asking, what is someone to do when they're
Oh,
feeling
right,
that
right.
way?
So if you're going through it, yeah, it's not easy. That path is not easy. Because there, as the saying goes, if you're trying to enlighten, you'll either enlighten or go mad. And Sadhguru talks about that as well. Sadhguru Jagi Vasudev from India talks about that as well. That there's this part of it that, it feels like you're going crazy because no one understands what you're going through. And trying to find people to talk to about it that don't know it, it's really hard to share those experiences with people because they think you're just crazy. And there's not, like Sadhguru talks about, like he thought that he was going to be able to change the world, and then realized you can't. Like you can't bring everyone along, no matter how awakened you are, because everyone's got to go through that path themselves. So all you can do is just teach and help and guide, because eventually everyone gets there anyway. Like it's inevitable, right?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, is everyone meant to go on that path? But I guess everyone is. It's just it's just the timing of it.
Yeah, there's some big questions here. There's nothing. There's nothing meant. There's nothing that we're meant to do, except wake up and know who we are. That's really, we don't even realize that we already are awake. That's the psychosis, is that we are already awake anyway, and we don't realize it. We live in the box, and we wonder, how important this box is. And when you come out of the box, you realize that box just means nothing at all. It just means nothing. It's gone, and I don't really need it. But the process of awakening, like Anthony DeMello was saying, it's not easy. It is challenging. It's challenging. But the reward is knowing who you are. You can't unsee and unknow when you then know. Mm-hmm. You can't go back. You can't go back to the psychosis because you already know. It's like in Plato's cave, right? When they're all sitting in there and they're looking at their shadows from the fire, and they believe that's who they are. And someone walks out of the cave, comes back in and says, hey, there's a place outside the cave. And everyone in the cave is going, no, there's not. No, there's not. No, this is it. This is it. But no, that if you just come out with me, you'll see. And people are afraid to walk out of the cave, right? Because who am I now? Yeah.
You shared that there is it seems like there's a process to this. Mm-hmm. Maybe that you're writing a book, so mm-hmm. I imagine you're going to dive into more of how someone can go about this. So mm-hmm. is there a structure or framework or anything like that, steps that someone can take?
Yes, that's a book.
What are the chapters?
That's why it's a book.
Mm-hmm.
If it was that easy, anyone could teach it, right? Sure. If it was that easy to be just like, here you go, this is how you enlighten, 3 steps, like you see, in the magazines, like 3 steps to becoming fit, right? And they're always inventing new ways of becoming fit and losing weight, the whole bit, right? But it's not that hard, right? It's the same thing with this. There are no 3 easy steps to this. It's a journey, and the journey's in, right? In knowing yourself. So you move along at your own pace. If you try to move too fast, you lose your way. If you try to move too slowly, you get back into the psychosis. So you have to just keep a balance in your life of, this is why Siddhartha, that people know as the Buddha, taught the middle path, right? Don't go here, don't go there. Just nice and steady down the middle, right? That will get you there. The Buddhist way is a methodical way of becoming awake, right? In the early teachings. It has changed recently, but in the early teachings, that's how it was, so that you're not trying to fly ahead. I know what that's like. I tried to do that, and trying to experience something that you're not ready for is very scary. It's not that it's frightening and that you're going to get harmed. It's frightening in that you're not ready to experience how vast and overwhelming it is when you're not ready for it. Like a kindergartner going, hey, fly this plane for me. How could they do that? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. If you're not ready for that experience, you won't recognize it, number one, and you'll be frightened by it. Yeah, like I was.
What do you mean when you won't recognize it?
I'll tell you, and I tell you about an experience I had in meditation, right? Very early on when I started to meditate, okay? I read a book, and there were some meditations in there, and I should have known because it said black magic. So I read one of the meditations in there, so I went downstairs. In my basement, I had a little workout room. And I was just sitting on an upright chair like this in the basement. And I went through in my mind the visualization of what this was in the book. And I got into it really quickly, into the visualization. And part of that was, you're in a room with very dimly lit room, it's kind of dark. There's a small pool in the middle of water, and there's a sand path around it, 4 doors. And they tell you, choose whatever door you like. I went through a door. As soon as I opened the door, now I'm in this vast blackness. And I felt like I was traveling through it at a very high speed. But I couldn't see my body or anything. I couldn't recognize my body. I was just aware I was in this space. And as I'm moving through this vastness, right, it became bigger and bigger and more overwhelming and more overwhelming. And it wasn't scary in that, like, I'm going to get harmed. It was just, I don't know where I am. I don't know how to deal with what I'm feeling and what's coming to me, what I'm experiencing. And that scared me. And so I said, I have to stop. The second I stopped, my eyes popped open on the chair in the basement. I was completely out of breath. I had no breath left. Mm-hmm. I had to get up off the chair and struggle to get my breath back. And I thought that I'd gone for hours, but it was a matter of minutes. And I realized I was leaving my body. Mm-hmm. And I was not ready for that. I was no way ready to just leave my body like that. So that experience overwhelmed me, and I learned, don't try things that you're not ready for.
Well, I imagine the signs are different for different people, but how do you know when you're not ready for something? Because you can pick up a book, right, like you did, and read something and say, hey, I should try that. So how do we know that we're not ready for it? If you're experiencing something that's too much for you to handle, you're there. Okay. So really, it's a kind of a trial and error thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. I am, my nature is to push. Right? My nature is to push, and I want to seek more and more and more and more. Right? So I push and I push and push, and there have been times throughout these years where I pushed too much, and then I experienced things that I wasn't ready for. So I would say you recognize those things when they come to you when you're not ready for them, and that's when you need to slow down. Yeah, they'll let you know.
How has meditation, you mentioned meditation, how is meditation part of the practice of awakening?
Oh, well, so today, right, and for quite a number of years, since the New Age, right, when all that started, there were so many notions about meditation and mindfulness that came out that were just nonsense. Meditation is not of the mind. Anything of the mind is mindfulness. because you're using the mind. Meditation, you leave your mind behind. You leave your body behind, your emotions behind, and your mind behind. I know that's a hard thing to understand, because you're like, well, how do I think if I don't have a mind? Because there you have an awareness. Who you are is an awareness that doesn't need this brain. There's an awareness there. So in meditation, that's where you're going, into the awareness, leaving behind all this thoughts of stuff, the psychosis in your mind. You leave that behind. Now you become the observer, right? You're now the observer in the aware consciousness, looking back at yourself. So now you can understand yourself as the human from that place and recognize that, oh, look, I'm part of a play, and this is the role I'm playing on this play. That's fun, but I want to do it my way, not the way I'm told to do it, or the way I'm expected to do it, or what people controlling my life say I'm supposed to do it. No, I'm going to do it the way I want to now, because shouldn't we be able to control this piece of life, right? The one that's, right? We can't control much outside of ourselves, but this we should be able to control and be able to live the human life you want to live, right? So when you get into that meditation part, when you're then at one, you're one now with the eternal aware consciousness, and now you're in that space. And what I found very interesting in when you get to that space, and I call it a space because we use words, but what I found in that space is that knowledge and wisdom is there. It just comes to you. Like you're so aware of the vastness and connected with everything that there's knowledge and wisdom that just comes to you without even knowing it's coming to you. And then you come out of meditation and you start to realize things that you never realized before. You start to see things very differently than you have before. And then you don't say anything about it because you think people think you're crazy. But that's what meditation is. And like I said before, all those things we do, yoga, tai chi, and all these different practices, right, and mindfulness, are just to get you to that place, quality of being, so that you can be there.
It sounds like part of the psychosis of humanity is thinking that you need to think in order to get there.
Yes.
When you actually let it go,
yes.
It'll come.
It's just then it becomes this, because our brains are wired that way, where we are repetitive thinkers. And so we regurgitate the same thoughts over and over again. And we think we can think our way there. You can't think your way there. So one of the things that I'm writing about in the book, right, is that we think that, intelligence, right, will get you there. Like, I think it's kind of funny that I hear these brilliant scientists, physicists, just amazingly intelligent people talking about God in the most nonsensical ways you could imagine. They have no experience of it, and they think they can think their way logically to it. You can't. It's not logic. It's beyond that, like scientists looking for the God particle. They're looking for this thing that, like, ultimately, this is what all life comes from. Well, life comes from no thing. Mm-hmm. All things come to be from the no thing, which Shiva means no thing, right? So Shiva is the ultimate aware consciousness, right? That is no thing. It's not physical. Awareness isn't physical, right? But then everything comes into manifestation in physicality. And because we're human and we think we are it, then we can intelligently, figure it out. We'll figure it out with our brains. Can't get there from here.